Now, the National Planning Commission is hosting a webinar this month. It's going to discuss its recent report on South Africa's economic state. The report is called A Review of Economic Progress Towards the National Development Plan, or NDP's Vision for 2030. The subheading is Recommendations for Course Correction. So this is all with the intention of charting a course towards a decent life for all South Africans by 2030. This morning, we're asking if this is possible. You've seen our guests. If you haven't, let me introduce them again to you if you've just tuned in. Former Statistician-General, Dr. Pali Lehohla, who, while talking on Morning Live yesterday as well, spoke a little bit more about it, saying that the NDP never moved from the shelf and only exists on paper. But to get more, we've also invited the Commissioner from the National Development Plan itself, economist Miriam Altman. We begin now with handing the mic over to Miriam. Miriam, quite rightly, we invited you here to talk about this report, and we want to offer you that time to talk us through, and then we can pick through and see what is realistic and not. So, Miriam, let me hand it over to you to just talk to us a little bit about what the plan actually entails now and the report.
So what the report does, our terms are ending shortly. And what the report does, we've done very deep work over the past period of years on everything from performance and state of enterprise, education, labor market policy, and so on. And the key questions that arise, to Patty's point, is what did the NDP actually say? And what progress has been made? And it's not correct to say there's been no progress, but the reality is that overall we've gone backwards in relation to, particularly in relation to the economy. So we know that the economy was shrinking even before COVID. But the reality is that there was a plan, and there was a lot that was useful in it and very concrete targets. When we say course correction means exactly what you've said. We need to get on course with getting to full employment, and we should still have that aspiration. I'm not sure what the idea of a wish list is, but putting forward, that idea is very dismissive. The idea is to say we need to be on a transformation path that requires vision. Maybe you need a wish list to get there. I don't know, but you need a vision, which is not this. That would be different than what you see today. Now, what the NDP does is it charts a course of how to get there, both in terms of what the target should be and also how to get there physically. Now, the critical thing that we've zeroed into, so we do an analysis mostly focusing on the cross-cutters, which we think are the most important right now. So the big ticket focus areas are on the fiscal sustainability, building the capital base, building human resources, strengthening labor markets, digital readiness, and a capable state, and then we make recommendations around how to manage COVID, most critically, at this point. Now, the recommendations and what we're trying to do with this report, we believe as the Commission, our overarching review and this particular report is extremely concrete in relation to saying the critical issue right now is not to come up with another policy list which says, because we know we need to procure energy, we know we need to fix education, we know there are a whole range of things that we know we need to do, and there are sufficient reports and lists of things that have to be done. The critical thing that we focus on is who's going to do it. The critical problem right now in terms of delivery and in terms of making progress, in our view, is that the institutional capacity to deliver is so weak right now. And the commitment to accountabilities, governance, leadership is not where it needs to be. And that is the most critical problem when you look at the management of the budget process, how revenue services was undermined, municipal leadership, SOE leadership. Those are, I'm just giving examples, the way that school principals are appointed, the accountabilities in the top post-school education institutions. So what we've done with this report is to connect those institutional issues to making economic progress so that government, but also civil society, can see what they should be demanding or what they should be asking for in relation to all of those key things. So how the boards of SOEs are appointed, how the leadership should be appointed and stabilized, how the budget process should work, when they see a school principal appointed, which is so critical to making progress in education, how it should look. When they see, municipal leadership, when you wonder why capital budgets aren't spent and why we can't get any stability in municipal leadership, part of it is that there isn't the quality of leadership that we need in municipalities based on metrics. So what we do is we lift up what those metrics are and try to show precisely what should be seen, both again from a government perspective and also from a civil society perspective, what we really need to focus on, which is this institution building and leadership building.
Okay.
And we try to be extremely concrete and precise about that.
Yeah.
So I think that is where, I know that Pali produced, with a range of other people, Asghar Adalzadeh and so on, a view. There have been other scenario processes. Businesses put out documents. They tend to focus on the top line deliverables. So I doubt that there's anything in Patty's paper that is different in essence, around what we're saying needs to be delivered. Where we zero in is on that, what needs to be done to make sure that there's the leadership, accountability, governance, and so on, to ensure that there is delivery, and very precisely so.
And that is a good enough explanation as to what the NDP is all about, what it stands for, what it hopes to achieve. Now, the reality is that at the bottom of it and in the center of all of this is leadership. And we are not seeing the leadership to attain any of what you're talking about, because over the years we have seen these resources being squandered and not being put into the areas that are going to make life better for all. And I think that's where the frustration is coming through, because on paper the NDP is wonderful, but in reality it just doesn't appear to be working. And that I think is the heart of the discussion of where we're going. So, Pali, now that we've heard from Miriam, and she's given us a great explanation as to what it's all about, give us your response again in light of what's just been said.
My response will be, all this that she's saying was said by the first document, and repeating it is not going to change anything. That's the point I'm making, that unless the NDP and the people that are there are empowered to enforce things, nothing will change. And enforcement means having the tools with which to work and the ability to demonstrate upfront that the things she's talking about are achievable. And if we do not go there, then this is the scenario. So a report of the NDP that doesn't have scenarios is doomed to fail. That's the problem. And South Africa had scenarios before. Now you produce an NDP that doesn't have scenarios, and then that doesn't have a planning system that depends on MTSF for planning. That can't work, because the MTSF itself, it's an implementation system between the NDP and what they are talking about in the recommendation. It's a vacuum of a planning system. That's why I'm saying you need at least a set of decent tools that can demonstrate that if we have done all this laundry list of things that she's talking about, you can achieve a better life. It is true that they cannot object to anything that she has listed, but that doesn't make a plan. You need tools to demonstrate and to get people to use those tools to get into achieving this. The problem is a vacuum of planning, and I've emphasized this all the time, that unless you have a planning system, the policies will sit there. The MTSF will try and come and connect the policies with expenditure. There is no coherent plan that shows that when we have done this and sequencing all those things, there is nothing in the document that illustrates that. And that is where my frustration and my argument that this thing is doomed to fail rests. Until we've got that kind of system. The Russians have the horse plan. The Chinese have it. The Americans have it. South Africa doesn't have it.
Yeah, and that is.
Please, if I can understand, what I'm hearing Patty saying is he would rather have had, if we had choices to be made. And firstly, this is not a new plan. there was a very good plan that was stated. That when we reviewed the whole thing, we went through the details. You would rather have scenarios rather than concrete recommendations around institutional change. Now, you've been well, that's what you just said. So you would rather, you think that the critical thing, and this is what you just said, this is what I heard, is that there are no scenarios in it, and there's no CGE modeling that was presented, and that is the downfall. Well, you know, the critical thing that is in the paper is it, and it is most certainly not a wish list. What it does is it strengthens the issues around governance. We have not, even though governance and state capacity was a very big deal in the initial plan. You know, one of the self-criticisms is that we probably haven't been strong enough in driving that discussion. That discussion on leadership. And you can't make great change without strong leadership and accountability and governance. It is just physically impossible. What we're saying is in the key locations, and that's what we identify in the paper. It is not a wish list. It is very carefully identified, and that's what we should be debating, is in the key locations that matter for progress in the economy. We are struggling to put in place the leadership, the accountability, the governance, to your point, politics involved in administration, the planning systems that don't cascade effectively, and we have other documents in the NPC that focus on that. But the critical thing is to guide people to both planners in government, and we've been meeting around this MTSF that you're feeling, 5-year plan, I don't know what's wrong with that, but meeting around how to align that, and for civil society to know concretely what would it mean to strengthen this leadership so that we are enabling a national conversation and discussion that is concrete around these issues, rather than just saying we need stronger leadership, to say precisely what it is and which locations we should be focusing and what the institutional gap is and why that's going wrong.
But
if
Miriam,
you
from
don't
your side,
have that in place, we can't make progress.
Exactly, and I think that's where we're going here is the frustration. And I'm looking at our time. We need to take a break and then call back in to the call just so that we can continue the conversation. But Miriam, very quickly, does it not disappoint you when, as you say, the plan is in place, but it is all dependent on leadership to achieve this? But when you look back over the years, it is the lack of leadership that has not even remotely brought us to the goals to where we should be in 2020, never mind 2030, which is the ultimate goal. Does it not frustrate you and worry you that this plan is being completely disregarded in terms of leadership?
It is painful to see where we are as a country. And part of what we're trying to achieve, and I hope Pali comes on board with a constructive debate around this, because that would be very welcome, is that we're saying from the NPC perspective, where we are is very sad in relation to social metrics, economic metrics, and we're trying to suggest this is the reason why. This is what needs to change to start making progress. The only thing you can do if you want to see a country that works, and I hope we're all on board to trying to make sure that happens. I know Patty is. I know everybody in the room here is to identify what that is and keep on with that project of trying to drive forward. And are people feeling angry and frustrated? Of course, desperately frustrated. But this is what we're trying to do here, and this is where we put our effort, was to say, where is the core of the problem? So all the teams that were working with us were asked, so we've all agreed we want infrastructure. We've agreed we want education. No one will fight about that. So why doesn't it move in the way that it needs to? Where is it succeeding? It's not failing everywhere, by the way, but where is it succeeding and why? And what is going wrong?
Okay.
And the focus there is on the institutional capability and governance and ability to deliver.
Miriam, I have to pause you, and we got to log out of this. There you go, as right on time. We're going to call back into the call and wrap up the conversation. If there's anything you want to add, you're more than welcome to. But I think when we come back, we'll go back to Pali. He's got a lot to say about this and a lot of responses. And what does he put on the table and propose? Let's quickly take a break. We'll continue this conversation and wrap it up after this.